Hey fellas, before we get in the video, I just want to quickly say that I'm not advocating for or encouraging the doxing, targeting, harassment, or bullying of any individuals that may mention or feature in this video, or this is an opinion piece of my particular commentary on the subject matter, however controversial as it may be. So, without I quickly say it, let's go ahead and start the show.
I want my family back.
Okay.
Give me back my family.
Get off me!
I want my family back.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your Panda back in action. Top of the today, but something else, you guessed it, more furry drama. It never ends, does it? The cycle is truly infinite. I mean, I feel like it's getting to be a little bit of a sacrifice of the soul, having to cover this bullshit day in and day out, and to subject myself to such things as secondhand embarrassment and cringe. But you know what? Maybe, just maybe, it's a worthwhile sacrifice. Because I do it for you, dear audience! Jokes aside, I think that love is truly a blessed thing, don't you? And sure, love can make people do crazy, irrational bullshit sometimes, but at the same time, at the end of the day, in its broadest sense, in its purest form, love is truly a great thing. You know, it's all around us every day. And if it's not, you know, an old saying, better to have loved than lost and never loved at all. And then there's that furry trope where it's like, all the single furries, all the single furries. Before we even begin unpacking today's drama, I want to ask you all a simple question. It's a little bit personal, so please forgive me, but of what value do you place on love, true love, compassion, affection, romance, intimacy? See, love here in the furry fandom can take on a multitude of different forms, and in my personal experience, I've always found dating here in the fandom to be a little bit of an awkward and sordid affair. Obviously, the dating landscape is very diverse, just as diverse as the furry fandom is itself, because, you know, you have every denomination of the LGBTQ community, as well as those identifying as being straight or bisexual. This is not a bad thing. I think that what's truly beautiful about the furry fandom is that it's so accepting, you know? The premise is that from all walks of life, all kinds are accepted here, almost to a fault. You know what I mean if you watch some of my Hypnotist Sappho videos. But at the same time, there are inevitably going to be some problems. I mean, given how complicated things can be sometimes. And the problems that you see here in the furry fandom, they're nothing new, okay? Like, the fandom is merely a microcosm of greater everyday society. So, inevitably, the same problems that you would see in everyday society are going to show up here. It's just that they seem so much more magnified and over the top and exaggerated. But maybe that's because of our hyper-focus on the fandom as just a limited denomination of people that identify as being furry. So, as far as the various forms that it could take, it could be something as simple as the platonic love that you feel for a variety of different friends out there. The emotional bond that you share is just enough that you give a shit about them and you truly care about them. But there's no sexual interest there. Taking that a step further, then you have fuck buddies. And fuck buddies, they can come in a multitude of different forms too, you know? Like anybody that you want to get down and dirty with. But at the same time, like generally speaking, there's usually the premise of friendship there that keeps you both bound. You can have sex all day long, and, you know, when you tire of that, you can move on to the next partner. No harm, no foul. The beauty of that is that there's no commitment, all right? That's why it's so appealing, and that's why it's so common. Although, you know that old trope where it's like all these single furries out there, the stereotype is that you have so many furries out there that are lonely, desperate, and single. They are willing to take on anybody to call as their own. So it's at that point that you enter a committed relationship, or a monogamous relationship. You know the old saying that it takes two to tango? You can have a man and a man, you can have a man and a woman, or you can have a woman and a woman. But for all intents and purposes, they are your entire world. You know, you will go through any storm, go through thick and thin to be with your significant other. And just as much as your significant other is yours, you are your significant others. Now, not all people are wired to have a monogamous relationship, all right? It's at that point that they take the structure of a monogamous relationship, in which case they have a very deep emotional connection to one other person, but it's now considered an open relationship, insofar as the sexual partners can be on a rotation, you know, either randos, or it can be like mutual friends that both parties are comfortable with inviting into their sex life, all right? And then you have people that they're not really wired for the whole monogamous relationship thing. It's at that point that they want a polyamorous relationship. That's where you have a multitude of different partners that come together. And on paper, they all feel the same amount of love towards one another, and it's between the partners that they all have sex. So it's one big happy unit. I was about to say one big fappy unit, and there might be a little bit more truth to that than I care to admit right now, but you know what I mean, right? Then you can have the platonic relationship model, in which case maybe both parties are asexual. However, one thing that I learned about asexuals is while the actual act of penetration, whether giving or receiving, that's not really all that appealing for them. But they will place a great deal of value on the fetishes and kinks that get their rocks off, you know? And whatever media it takes, whether it be videos or, imagery. And maybe that's what brought them together in the first place. So what I'm trying to say is there is something here for everybody. However, at the end of the day, we all have a fundamental physical and emotional need, okay? We have physical and emotional needs, all right? And anytime those needs aren't met, that's where it sort of lends itself to an imbalance in the relationship. It's at that point that one or both partners will cheat on the other. Truly a tragic thing, you know? I remember very distinctively years ago, I had a friend who I knew for a fact was in a committed relationship. And they were pursuing somebody actively for sex. And I just kind of turned to them like, bro, buddy, aren't you hooked up with so-and-so? His response was, so-and-so don't need to know. And I just kind of looked at him, and I'm just like, okay, buddy, you play, you pay. Never saw him again after that. So I can only assume that their significant other put on a mob hit on his life. And now he's at the bottom of the bay with a pair of cement shoes. Nah, just fucking with you. It is true, though. I did fall out of contact with him. He disappeared, once upon a time. And the only conclusion I can get is that he got himself into a whole heap of trouble, and he decided to just adopt a new name, adopt a new identity, adopt a new persona. Not unheard of here in the furry fandom. Anytime that somebody gets into irreparable harm to their reputation, to the point that they actually have to assume a new identity, they just take on a new name and a new persona, and they disappear, and they blend right back into the furry fandom. It's only a problem when they run into the same people that recognize them for who they are. By their voice, their appearance, anything like that. But we're not here to talk about that. I mention all of this because it is tangentially related to what we're going to be discussing here today. So, as far as the narrative, I want to pose to you all a very simple narrative, alright? You got a man and you got a woman. They come together, they love each other very much. They love each other so much, they're willing to get married. And one day, the man, he wants to start a family. Now, the connotations in my mind is that generally speaking, it's the woman that wants to have kids, start a family. And I'm not trying to pull a stereotype here. I'm just saying that generally speaking, it seems like the woman's generally the one that wants to start a family. Guys not always all sold for that because kids means responsibility. That's a commitment right there. But in this case, the guy, he wants to start a family. Now, unfortunately, the woman, she's not all sold on the idea, for whatever reason. She's not willing to take on his virile seed and become inseminated to conceive like an actual child. So they do the next best thing. They get together and they adopt a kid. Perfect! You got one big, happy, dysfunctional family, right? Well, it would have been, except that more recently, the woman, she ran out on the marriage. She ran out on the kid. And it's one thing if she pulled a free bird and she's just spreading her wings to exercise her freedom for once in her life. But she runs straight into the arms of, another couple. And this other couple, right, they have a deeply controversial history here in the furry fandom. The litany of transgressions that follow their shady past is truly a sight to behold. But that is her port in the storm. She forged a friendship with this couple, not too long ago, and she ran right to them for comfort, for solace, for, ease, in her time of need, and left the man and the child alone, forgotten, and forsworn. Now, here's the crazy thing, right? The furry fandom will react to things that happen in their midst. Anytime that you bring something publicly, different perspectives will very quickly develop. Now, this narrative that I pitched to you all, I want you to reflect very hard on the word narrative, okay? Because that is the narrative, okay? That's what seems to have happened. So, does this sound familiar at all? Does this, get your noggin jogging at all? Like, did this situation seem familiar to you in any sense? If not, I'm going to go ahead and define who these people actually are. All right, the man that I cited before, his name is Foxglove. You know, he's an altogether decent Christian furry by all accounts. He works in IT, and he lives out there in Oklahoma. He was married to PeaceWolf. Where did I hear the word PeaceWolf before? Oh yeah, she's the owner of Free For All, that FashCon taking place out in Oklahoma. Now, Free For All had garnered such a negative reputation when it was like announced at the very beginning, and it just sort of continued when it actually took place. And I was just kind of like gazed amazed that it actually even took place in the first place, because here's the thing, it was so unpopular, I could only imagine what kinds of people would actually show up to the convention itself. And it's about what you would expect. I mean, like, Free For All was sold to the public as this good old-fashioned American furry con, you know, a throwback to going back to the roots of the furry fandom. It was really beholden to the freedom of speech, even though they were actively deleting comments directed at the convention because they were so negative. But, the people that showed up were the most controversial, reprehensible people that you could imagine, far and wide, all right? You got Fox or Nightfire, for instance, guilty of, actually, yeah, he was prosecuted for, like, you know, grooming a minor across state lines. You got Diesel Raccoon, who was the laughingstock. He's going to inflate you all big and round. You had Jason Effects, you had Kabir, you had Zooptoon, presumably. You had a bunch of different people that were just absolutely atrocious. Their reputations are underwater right now. Like, effective right now, okay? You go on furry Twitter, you're going to find a good many people that are actively hating on these people. Even Crusader Cat. And I don't think he deserves as much hate as he gets, but I do have some questions about his dark and sordid past. Anyway, all that to say, the negative reputations and the negative connotations that followed Free For All obviously transferred PeaceWolf because she's at the head of the whole thing. And, like, she herself doesn't really present as that much of a problematic figure, right? She's a good Christian girl. One of those good Christians that Hypnotist Sappho would probably refer to as. And, like, the only thing that I can really say is that she desperately needs a visit by, like, the fashion police, all right? That fedora that she wears with, like, the cross on it, that is cringeworthy as hell, yo. I mean, like, honestly. You know, that's sort of like a rite of passage for any neckbeard trying to become a Discord moderator or anything like that. But in, like, her case, she'd be a legbeard, according to Reddit. But she tries to paint herself. She puts on this veneer of being a good, wholesome Christian girl, right? You know, truly virtuous and down to earth, like, speaks her mind. I will say that she's been a little bit tone deaf insofar as what she would say on Twitter, because, like, you know, some furries here, they actually legitimately believe there's systematic racism, and I do agree in certain circumstances, but, you know, PeaceWolf, like, for instance, people were actively, like, complaining about the state of affairs, how systematic racism has affected their fellowship, and you know what PeaceWolf's response was? What racism? I guess she only sees things in shades of gray, not black and white, but needless to say, it didn't really earn her a whole lot of gratitude by mainstream furry, like, fandom, okay? In fact, like, that sort of garnered a negative reputation, sort of followed everything that she did. And, like, in the running of Free For All, she, in, like, the days that were leading up to the convention, she openly associated with such controversial figures as Canny Lupine. Now, do you remember who Canny Lupine is? He's a great fella. I guarantee it. No, he's not. I could probably make an entire video on just about everything he's ever said. The most egregious thing that he said more recently is that he wanted, like, the last thing that he said before some terrible things happened to him, he wanted to start a genocide directed solely at trans people. Like, he wanted those ovens rip-roaring to go. He wanted to, like, fucking, like, start a holocaust of transgender people. And he was just saying some wild, off-the-wall things. And, like, you know, that's obviously a personal affront to everybody here in the furry fandom. The furry fandom was built on the premise of open acceptance for all. That includes the transgender community. So the fact that he would say such atrocious things, woo, that was a little bit more spicy than I could really tolerate, to say the least, about all the litany of things that he would say beforehand. But What ended up happening to him is that there was sort of an abortion protest, and he slung death threats at his own governor of his own state, and Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States. So his ass is sitting in jail. He's going to have plenty of time to think about everything that he said and done, but that was just one of the various people that, like PeaceWolf would associate with. Whether directly or indirectly is up to you, but, given everything that I know now, it's just kind of like, the company that you keep is kind of indicative as to your mode of character, because if somebody is truly egregious, you're not going to tolerate them in your immediate presence for very long, right? Probably not, all right? Which leads me to the other two people. By the way, you're going to notice that I skipped over the kid. The kid's identity is not public knowledge as of yet. I do not know the public identity of the kid, but they do exist. However, in what shape, way, or form, you're going to find out here in a bit. But all right, so if you're following, Foxglove is the guy, PeaceWolf is the girl. She ran out on the marriage, left behind the husband and the kid, okay? So who did she run to for her needs? Like, who did she run to for comfort, for ease, for solace? Well, she ran to none other than JSONFX and Kabir.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
No.
That's no good.
Oh no! Anyway.
Now comes the part where we throw our heads back and laugh. Ready?
Ready!
Ooh, I've never felt such a strange combination of pity and indigestion.
Or cabs, or cabbie cakes. I had the occasion to meet them on VR chat once upon a time, and they were actually pretty chill people, which was absolutely surreal to me at the time, because it's just like, I was aware of all the raunchy things that both would say on social media, at least JSONFX mostly. For instance, this is the same guy that, used the N-word openly and defended his use of the N-word, okay? The naughty word, the no-no gamer word. The word that shall not be spoken under any circumstance. Me personally, I always found the N-word to be like a dirty word. Just something that just sounds ugly, nothing I want to really hear in my personal company, but he'd say that. And the only thing that I really defended JSONFX on was his debate with Pepper Coyote, because Pepper Coyote was a royal prick at the time. And some would argue, is JSONFX really much better? In that moment, yes, I would definitely say that JSONFX's conduct, by comparison, was absolutely down to earth, direct. He was kind of quiet and kind of sheepish, though, but whatever. At least when he was at Anthrocon, at least he was respectful to Pepper Coyote, which is more than I could say for what Pepper Coyote did to JSONFX, turning into a public spectacle and making him like a three-way circus, for the fandom's amusement. But whatever. I cannot, in good faith and conscience, forgive or forget the litany of transgressions that JSONFX is guilty of, alright? If you want a good video as far as just a snapshot of the things that he's guilty of, Lagovert makes a pretty good video about that, alright? It actually includes audio recordings of a situation that JSONFX and Kabir found themselves in years ago. Definitely check it out. You know who Lagovert is, right? He's that white bunny dude with the glasses, and he has a smooth, smarmy voice to him. He puts on a pretty good video. Various other people have put out good videos. I just, me being sort of a JSONFX fanboy, sort of. I'm questioning my life decisions now because, can you really separate the art from the artist? See, that was a cornerstone of my channel for a while. Just playing Amorous nonstop, trying to give it half-decent, voice acting. And, a lot of people begged me to come back to it, and I don't know. It hits differently now that I know, the various things that I do. But I tell you all that because JSONFX, he has a long and sordid history here in the furry fandom. Now, the bone of contention that a lot of people have directed at JSONFX is that he's perceived as being a child groomer, alright? The reason for this is that there are claims that he'd been in contact as far back as when Kabir was only 13 years of age, his current waifu. And that, he's Australian born, he grew up in a small town in Australia. And, like, over the course of the years, right, he was in his late teens, and Kabir was only 13, and they were, like, communicating. That's a claim, unverified right now, but I wouldn't be surprised, because it was when, Kabir was 16, that's when G-Sonofx actually flew out from Australia to Canada to meet Kabir and to get together. Now, the problem is Kabir didn't exactly have the best living situation at the time. She had an alcoholic for a father, and her mother was a hoarder. So there wasn't any room in the household for G-Sonofx. And I can only imagine the conversation that G-Sonofx had with Kabir's father at the time. Like, this guy is in his 20s, and he's coming to see Kabir, who's 16, okay? Now, it wasn't illegal, but obviously the social ramifications are pretty bad. Like, it looks pretty bad, right? And like the father, he wouldn't even allow G-Sonofx to stay in the house. See, G-Sonofx, he had to live in a shack out back, colloquially referred to as the cuck shack. Classy, G-Sonofx. Very classy. And the worst thing about that is that G-Sonofx, years later, he would start his own podcast, and as like an ode of remembrance to those days, he actually called his podcast the Cuck Shack. And the whole gimmick about it was that it was a literal cuck shack where, like either G-Sonofx, Kabir, or they would have guest stars come in, and they were all animated, and they'd just be talking about this, that, or the other. Needless to say, the jokes just write themselves, don't they? Anyway, one of the other things is that they actually started a GoFundMe, and if you remember anything about G-Sonofx spearheaded a great deal of projects throughout his history here in the furry fandom. The ones I know about the most are, Amorous and Bareback Streets. And in spite of all these revenue streams, he and Kabir started a GoFundMe where they just wanted some basic, they wanted some income to pay for basic living expenses, right? Like spruce up the cuck shack, make it a more livable habitat, a domicile, in which case they could really truly call home. The furry fandom capitulated. They donated a great deal of money. What was the money spent on, you might ask? Well, a Shiba Inu. Yep, a dog. A dog. Not exactly something that would be conducive to sprucing up the place, making it a good domicile, but, maybe shit's stressful, right? Living in a place that you call the cuck shack. You need a service animal, you need some comfort, you need an animal that's going to come back to you every day and, distract you from the horrors of having to live there. But, after that, their living situation changed because they moved in with a guy named Bleakley, and Bleakley is a furry artist. He was supposed to be going to school at the time, alright? And his father, for instance, was paying for the residence in which he was staying at. And G-Sonofx and Kabir moved in, and Bleakley, the only thing that he really asked of them is that, hey, I'd really appreciate if you could contribute some funds to pay for living expenses, like food, maybe the upkeep of the house. Anytime that you have a bunch of furries move in together, even if the house is paid for, there's going to be some upkeep, like general expenses that are incurred. Whether it's the water bill, electricity bill, the heating bill, gas bill, whatever you want to say. Not to mention repairs on the property itself, right? So G-Sonofx and Kabir move in, and all seems fine for a while, until Bleakley actually turns to them for some financial assistance. He's just like, I'd be most obliged if you guys could throw me, some cash so I can pay for food, groceries, and things like that. And G-Sonofx and Kabir, they flipped it back on him and said, the only reason we moved in was because we cared about you. Why are you asking about money now? And they actually harped on him just for even daring to ask for them to contribute to the living situation at the house. And it's implied that there were some other things, like other issues. Maybe G-Sonofx had misrepresented the situation to Kabir, because she went full harpy on fucking, Bleakley's ass. And, Bleakley, he was supposed to be going to school. That's the whole reason that his father was paying for the property in the first place. The problem is that Bleakley was not going to school. He was trying to make it as a furry artist and probably contemplating what his next steps would be. G-Sonofx and Kabir knew that, and they were like, if they had any way to get into contact with his father, they would. They didn't know his contact information, details, nothing, but they basically just spilled the beans and said, if there was any way we could contact your father right now, we would, because you don't deserve to live here. And it turned into this whole mess, and the worst thing about it is the cops were called later, and the cops... See, Bleakley was smart, right? See, he was recording that whole conversation. And so when the cops came and they listened to the audio recording, they're just like, all right, girl was trying to fake it. Kabir was going to try to claim like sexual assault or rape or something like on Bleakley, but once they heard the audio, they're just like, all right, she bluffing, let's go. Bleakley kind of washed his hands of the whole thing, and altogether, it's pretty scummy behavior, don't you think? Like willing to blackmail somebody that you called a friend once upon a time for a litany of just mamby-pamby bullshit excuses. Now, whether or not Bleakley should have been living there, whether or not he was going to school or not, that's really the business of Bleakley and his father, I would imagine. That's not really the business, it's not really our business, number one. Number two, it's not really Gsonafx's or Kabir's business. They're moving in with a friend, and all he asked for was a little bit of monetary aid to, carry them through. Nothing that anybody out there that would have somebody live with them probably wouldn't ask for, alright? So, other than that, as, Gsonafx got more involved with the furry fandom, he had a very sort of aggressive stance on the woke PC culture of today, which is not good for most furries, alright? I already told you that this is the same dude that used the N-word and, defended his use of said N-word. His girlfriend, Kabir, backed him up. Yeah. So, he threw on a contest, a raffle, and somebody won the raffle, except Gsonafx didn't honor the deal, because the request by the raffle winner was for something that was non-sexual. And immediately, Gsonafx's interest in that depleted, because, non-sexual things don't really sell well, right? And, not only did he have the audacity to just, shift it to somebody else, somebody else jumped in, and they felt so moved by how bullshit the situation was, they animated the picture for that, the raffle winner. And Gsonafx actually had the gall to show up and leave a snarky comment about how the work was subpar and how he could do so much better.
Are you kidding me? This baby is off the charts. Why?
It's if you could do so much better, why didn't you do it in the first damn place? He won your raffle. Regardless of whether it was sexual or not, you should have honored the deal. Anyway, whatever. What I'm trying to portray to you all, I'm trying to convey to you all, is how reprehensible Gsonafx truly is. Now, is he a good animator? Like I said before, a lot of people throw around the terminology of jigglebone physics and things like that as putting into question whether Gsonafx is truly good at what he does, but it's undeniable he must have been doing something right, at least from a marketing or sales position, because, he is where he is today. Popular, he's got his own community, he's got a litany of fans that kind of turn a blind eye to his more controversial activities to focus on, what he does. He and Kabir, they're a tag team partner, the partners in crime. And I will say this, they look good, they're young, attractive. See, PeaceWolf, she looks like a 1960s librarian to me. She's a little bit of a pudgier version of my first girlfriend, number one. Number two, some people have likened her to a Karen. And, some people are just pulling trickery. They would take her image off Twitter, manipulate it in Photoshop a little bit, and she would look like, a gross, disgusting person. But those pictures are just done in bad faith. She herself, by furry standards, she looks a little bit plain, but she's fairly attractive for who she is. She's got long, flowing blonde hair, and the only thing that I don't like about her is that she's got terrible fashion sense wearing that fucking fedora. Anyway. So, I tell you all this because you can imagine how jarring it is when the whole furry fandom sees this happening, unfolding before their very eyes. As far as the timeline of events, this was taking place at the beginning of November, going into mid-November, alright? That's when the anticipation got on. And that's when I first noticed the story, and I was just sort of monitoring it, kind of checking in occasionally, just to see, are there any new developments? Is there any veracity to this story? Because it was truly compelling, a runaway mom. Not unheard of, but at the same time, for it to happen here in the furry fandom, you can only imagine the three-ring circus that's going to turn into. So like I said before, everybody was losing their mind. Some people were grabbing the popcorn. Anybody that was sort of considered alt-furry or conservative furry or Christian furry, they were absolutely condemning PeaceWolf. And they were slinging fucking Bible verses at her. God damn it, girl, you be damned to hell! And, my old tagline, go to the church and ask God to fug you. That's what I would be saying, but, like they were calling into question her fidelity, her infidelity, to her husband, and how dare she had the audacity to run out on her husband and the kid. Now, leftists, people that were liberals, agnostic, or atheist, or anything of the variety of the sort, they're more calling her out for the simple premise of the narrative. That, they didn't give a shit that she ran out on her husband, who they saw as a piece of shit anyway. But they were calling her out because she left a fucking child behind. That was the implication here that so many people were pissed off about. That she would have the audacity to run out on the kid. And for a long time, people were saying, yo, this is a story of, this is not a story of heroes or villains. This is a fucking shit show. And the only person that I feel that I give a damn about in this whole story is the fucking kid. They are going to be fucked up when they grow up. And, even some artists, an artist got in on it and, just drew a picture of a burnout of a furry, smoking a cigarette, not having a good time, and he's just sort of looking and glaring. And it's just Mom, why'd you leave us? And the female furry is drawn in such a smug way. It's oh, to piss off the liberals, honey. It's no big deal. Hee hee. So you can imagine why so many people were pissed the fuck off. And the worst thing about it, the absolute worst thing about it, is that the only reason that all of us know about this is because Foxglove, the husband I was referencing before, he was feeling sour grapes after the whole thing, He left in his Twitter bio, our wife, my wife abandoned the family, so now I'm a single dad and I have to suffer by my own free will and try to make things work. He was trying to put on a pity party for himself. And obviously you're going to sympathize with the father, right? The father of the single kid, a single father that has to take care of the kid. You're going to sympathize with them because they have twice the burden, right? So it's going to be pretty interesting here in a little bit. You know why? So how did PeaceWolf leave? See, PeaceWolf left in a very specific way. So before you ask, there was no hi, bye, kiss my ass, nothing. There was no divorce papers on the kitchen table. She didn't even have a talk with, Foxglove, right? She didn't even converse with him about all this. But, when she ran out, right, she left behind a whiteboard. Those whiteboards that you see in the office? Maybe at your place of work in the rec room, people can take a dry erase marker and write on it. There were 2 images drawn on it. Now, the first image was something that was drawn in a very unique style. Kabir must have drawn it in that style, and that would reveal to me, at the time, I didn't really know if Kabir had occasion to be at the household, but based on information I found out later, I knew for a fact that both Jason Effects and Kabir had been at the household several times, in fact. But you got Jason Effects, Kabir, and they're getting all handsy with freaking PeaceWolf. They're definitely encroaching on her. And PeaceWolf, she's not entirely sure whether she likes it or dislikes it, right? She's kind of on the fence. She's not entirely sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing. But in the lower right-hand corner of the picture, you have 10 scratch marks, tally marks. Can you even guess what the implications of that are? And the worst thing about that is at the very furthest bottom right-hand corner of the screen, or I should say the white erase board of the image, there's 3 teardrops. Now, do you know what 3 teardrops means? See, here in VR chat, the joke is anytime I do something like this, that means I came. I spooged, I climaxed, whichever you want to say. So the implication of those 10 tally marks is that at least 10 occasions, PeaceWolf was fucking Jason Effects Kabir. They were all getting down, it's Kabir, fucking Jason Effects, and PeaceWolf. And they were having a threesome. Hot damn. Now, there are some very severe implications for that, but at the very bottom of that particular image, see, that top image was definitely drawn by Kabir. There's a little bit of debate as to what the bottom image, who drew the bottom image, but I would imagine PeaceWolf. So the bottom image, below that, is you see a wolf that's walking away from the viewer, and, at the very bottom of the dry erase board, in the imagery, you see a broken collar and chain, and it's weird, it's sort of like psychedelic. You got a lot of lines in the sky, radiating from the sun. Some people like to claim that maybe it's PeaceWolf under the influence of LSD. I can't really swear as to the veracity of that, but she's walking away from the viewer, right? And the worst thing about it is you see a Canadian flag, so that means she's like walking towards Jason FX Kabir. Jason FX Kabir live in Canada, by the way, in case you didn't know. But, so like, how did this happen? And like, why? Because there was no conversation beforehand. There was like, she didn't have an intervention with Foxglove explaining, hey, listen, this isn't working out. I'm leaving, blah, 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 blah. Like I said before, no hi, bye, kiss my ass, nothing. Not even divorce papers on the kitchen table. That would be the least bit decent, don't you think? Especially if there's a kid involved. All right, so, that all to say, what happens next? Like, Foxglove, he was out. He was probably getting groceries or something like that, tending to errands, whatever you want to, like, consider or, like, hypothesize or consider, like, you know, speculate. He comes home. He finds that dry erase board. He loses his fucking mind. He is panicking. His whole world is folding in on itself. He's just like, oh, jeez, and, he grabs his phone. He tries to call. I would imagine that he tried to call PeaceWolf, and PeaceWolf's not picking up. He tries to reach her on Discord, social media, and anything like that. Not picking up, not responding. And so he starts reaching out to friends, right? And he's just in a blind panic. He just doesn't know what to do, all right? And that's a hell of a thing, right? Like, your whole life. You expect to come home and find your significant other there waiting for you, with a loving smile, arms wide open, like greet you, like, how was your day, honey? And she wasn't there, and you just find that stupid dry erase board. That's one hell of a departure, right? Especially the revelation of the hinted at implication of her infidelity in fucking Jason FX and Kabir behind his back this whole time. So he starts reaching out, and he starts basically just saying, yo, there was no indication about this. Can you please reach out to her? Can you do something? Blah, 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 blah. And he's in full panic mode. And, it's sort of like the 5 stages of grief, right? He has to get to the point where he comes to terms with what happened. But, like, in the early days, he was just completely just off the wall. Just could not believe everything that happened. There was no warning, no indication, no heads up, no nothing. All right. So it's at that point that the hints start to reach social media, and various people that know both of them started to reveal what they knew. All right? And, like, anytime that there's, like, a breakup in a relationship or anything like that, people that get involved that are on the side of one or both people, like, different, they're referred to as flying monkeys, right? If you have a bias towards one over the other, then you're considered a flying monkey because you just, like, interact with the other just to get information and reveal that back to the one that you're loyal to. But, yeah. The story broke, and, like, Foxglove would post random things. Like, for instance, there was a fucking meme where a girl is, like, being questioned by a dude, and it's like, so, what are your dating preferences? And, like, the girl's just like, oh, I'm polyamorous. And the guy's just like, that's an awful lot of syllables for a common whore. So you can tell that as he's going through the 5 stages of grief, he's getting a little bit more bitter about it, as it sort of, like, hits what actually happened. All right? And, like, PeaceWolf certainly wasn't saying much. She did post an image of, like, a wolf biting down on chains and saying that she was young, that she didn't know any better, that she thought the relationship was everything that was supposed to be, but it wasn't, and that she didn't recognize true narcissism. Which is absolutely horribly fucking ironic, don't you think, considering the fact that she ran to fucking Jason FX and Kabir, of all people, to be with as her, like, comfort, her port in the storm in the midst of all this emotional chaos. Don't you think? That is the reputation, by the way, that Jason FX has sort of garnered for himself. He is considered to be a narcissist through and through, an egomaniac, absolutely egotistical, and just not exactly somebody that you can have a good relationship with. That's when the speculation hits. The narrative that we covered before, where it's like, there's a happy family, but the wife runs out on the family, leaving the father and the child behind. That's the narrative that's spread through all throughout Twitter, all throughout social media. Everybody's on board with that, and they're absolutely feeling sorry for the kid. And you would too, right? The kid didn't ask for this. The kid didn't ask to be adopted. That is a responsibility that's undertaken by the parents, right? They come together, they adopt the kid. But you see, here's a twist. How old do you think the kid is? People were speculating about that, right? Some people were just saying, I really hope they're an infant and they're not going to remember any of this. That's the best case scenario, some people said. Other people, they were just like, well, I mean, it shouldn't matter, but, you know, maybe they're in their teens, maybe they're, like, you know, less than 10. Who knows? Like, and a lot of people actually expressed reasonable doubt, you know, how I do. Reasonable doubt in the face of all this, because, like, knowledge of a kid, that was kind of a surprise to even people that knew both of them, like, in public. And so they're just like, wait, what the fuck? Well, where's this kid getting involved? Like, when did they have a kid, right? You don't know. And so questions start to circulate, and people sort of piece together that, yes, there is the existence of a kid. However, they would have had to adopt, or the kid's an infant, because, you know, both of them would show up in public events. Like, for instance, there were furry meets out that way, and both would be in vapid attendance. And so, like, if PeaceWolf was ever pregnant at any point in that, that's going to be like a year that she's going to lose because, you know, as the pregnancy takes hold and she gives birth to a child, she's going to be out of commission, right? So the only conclusion that people could come to is that they adopted. But a friend that was close to both of them said that the only reason that PeaceWolf even hopped on board to this idea of Foxglove and PeaceWolf coming together to adopt a kid is because Foxglove wouldn't shut up about starting a family. Now, that tells me something right there. That tells me that PeaceWolf, she didn't trust Foxglove completely, like 100%, because when a woman allows a man to penetrate them and, you know, fertilize them with their virile seed, that requires complete and total trust, or complete horniness to the max. But generally speaking, like, you know, if you expect to keep that kid to term, that's a lot of commitment right there. You two are to be bound at the hip from that point onwards, because if you're not, like, even divorced, like, even parents that don't particularly like their marriage, they will generally tolerate one another and stay together through thick and thin out of, like, respect for the child, because they want the child to have the best fucking childhood they possibly can. It's a sacrifice to the soul right there, but at the same time, good parents, they will recognize that, okay, our marriage is broken as fuck, but, like, we got a kid, and we want to make sure that that kid has a good fucking life ahead of them, right? So we're going to stay together, we're going to weather this storm, we're going to raise this kid, and after that, that's when we split paths. So it's kind of eye-opening that PeaceWolf would just throw all caution in the wind and go to, like, be with Jason Effects and Kabir of all people, right? So here's what's interesting. Multitudes of different people, like, came forward to share little tidbits of information. Foxglove apparently has a breeding impregnation fetish, kind of like I do, but they wanted, like, to start a family, and they just wouldn't shut up about it, and that's why PeaceWolf eventually, just to shut them up, allowed for the adoption of this kid. They didn't have, like, an actual naturally conceived child together, which is truly crazy, right? It's gotta be. And, like, on top of which, Jason Effects later, like, all of these people getting all up in arms, getting on PeaceWolf's case, like, coming after her, all with pitchforks and torches, and, like, slinging Bible verses at her, like, saying that she'll be damned to hell. Well, here's the thing. Jason Effects drops a bombshell, and that bombshell is that the kid is not going to have any bearing in the divorce at all, and that the divorce papers were being filed as he spoke. Because, you know, various people were like, you know, when they failed to reach PeaceWolf for comment, they went right for Jason Effects, and they were just grilling his ass and saying, "Why hasn't PeaceWolf spoken? We want a welfare check!" And Jason Effects is just like, bro, the kid's not even a factor in the divorce. Now, why is that, do you suppose? Well, number one, the kid is 17 years of age, and is going to be an adult in less than 2 months. 2, the adoption was never official. As in PeaceWolf and Foxglove, they never officially adopted the kid. The kid's identity is still a mystery right now, but if I find out during the recording and editing in this video, I'll be sure to add that in later. But yeah, not even going to be a factor in the divorce. And you know what? The divorce is proceeding as we speak. A lot of paperwork being filled out, according to Jason Effects. And so, like, now that whole narrative that I presented you throughout the duration of this entire video, it kind of falls apart at the seams, don't you think? And it's just like, why was Foxglove so intent on conveying that, like, this is a family? Now, Foxglove himself, I forgot to mention that various things that he would say, he sort of, like, portrays himself as this good, wholesome, innocent guy. Maybe a little bit of a wimp, but, like, he's more or less innocent and portraying himself to be, you know, maybe something he's not. One of those good Christians, as Hypnotist Sappho would like to say. Because, like, you know, he was just expressing doubt and, like, you know, he was just aghast and in disbelief of all this. He could not believe what was going on. He's just, like, saying, like, to mutual friends over Discord, he was saying, like, you know, he was complaining about the fact that PeaceWolf appears to be erasing him from just about every platform that she's a part of. Anything that she's involved with, and, like, Foxglove is there with her, she's trying to erase him, like, his existence from that, you know? She was truly trying to unperson him from her life. And PeaceWolf herself, she referred to, like, she basically said that Foxglove, she alludes to the fact that not only was Foxglove unfaithful, but also that he was abusive, narcissistic, and that while love and affection was shown in public, behind closed doors is an entirely different story. And that's true for a lot of things, right? You could see many idyllic relationships that seem to be perfect at a glance, but once you get to see the dynamic that they share in private, that's when you sort of get to see Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? Like, you know, the Beauty and the Beast. One person could be one and the same. Maybe both are one and the same. Who knows? Anytime you get two narcissists together, holy shit, is that going to be a lot of flack to fly? And people don't particularly like PeaceWolf. They find her to be narcissistic. They find her to be egotistical. So, like, what we're left with is some speculation because PeaceWolf, she was just kind of laughing at the concern that a great deal of the community was showing. You know, obviously you have various people out there that absolutely hate her now, and, like, a lot of people are just laughing at the fact that not only do the liberal furries hate her, but also the Christian and alt-right furries hate her too. But see, she's still the owner of Free-For-All, and people just sort of, like, looked at all this happening, and they were, like, asking the basic question, what's this mean for Free-For-All? Even, like, Crusader Cat, he's just, like, complaining about, oh man, this does not bode well for Free-For-All. All the hope that we had for this convention is fading into obscurity. I'm sorry, CC, but I think that the nature of the relationship between two people that are relatively prominent here in the furry fandom, I think that supersedes the fate of a convention, especially one so microscopic and of, like, little importance as Free-For-All. Free-For-All, I'm going to be generous and say that maybe 75 people attended. Maybe. Alright, because you kind of struggle to see 5 to 10 people at any given space inside the con. And their ball pit made DashCon ball pit look like the Ritz. So, I don't know, nothing of consequence there, I would say, because, you know, compared to things like Anthrocon, which was pushing 10,000 attendees this year, and, like, Midwest Fur Fest that just happened, which is, like, pushing 14,000 attendees. And then you, like, have something like Free-For-All where it just started and it's like, teeny little, like, tiny little convention. That's like a glorified fur meet right there. So anyway, but that shows me a little bit of selfishness on their part, because it's like, if PeaceWolf was truly your friend, you'd be more concerned about her relationship, and all that other stuff. You wouldn't be concerned about Free-For-All necessarily, because she's still the owner. She's still going to be there. She didn't disappear. Well, she didn't disappear as in nobody knows where she is. She's clearly somewhere, but she's kind of in hiding right now, you know, in emotional recovery. Now, I want to get into some more controversial things before we get into speculation as to who's on the right, who's on the left, or I should say who's right, who's wrong. Who's on the right and left, that's pretty fucking obvious. You should know already before you even got here, but if you really need me to break it down for you, PeaceWolf is kind of like, you know, conservative and what would be considered Republican by furry standards. So is Jason Effects Kabir, alright? Like, just to break that down, but no, some of the imagery, for instance, PeaceWolf didn't take it very seriously that people were kind of concerned about her disappearance. And they were actually grilling Jason Effects and just be like, yo, why hasn't she be talking on, like, Twitter? And it's like, dude, she posted yesterday. Twitter's not her number one priority right now. And, like, it's really through Jason Effects that he kind of revealed a lot of information. Now, other than that, the other thing to consider here is that PeaceWolf, she posted a picture that was basically of her. It was kind of like inspired by Jurassic Park, right? She's like holding her arms up as like a raptor-fied Jasonifex. Well, Jasonifex already is a raptor, but I'm talking about like a feral raptor. He's like advancing on her like a predator would. So is Kabir in her raptor form. And PeaceWolf is just like, she pulled a Ralph Wiggum and is just like,
I'm in danger.
haha, I'm in danger. So, ooh, she wasn't taking that seriously. Although I will say, one man with one desire. In spite of the fact that he only tangentially knew of PeaceWolf and Foxglove, he was so moved by this entire story, a runaway mother that dared to break the holy matrimony of marriage to be with Jasonifex Kabir. Well, he, in spite of the fact that he had no marriage counseling experience whatsoever, through the power of God, he was going to convince PeaceWolf to come home and forget about this lecherous affair. He got to Jasonifex, and Jasonifex pretty much shut him down pretty quick. It's one thing to, like, watch drama happen. Like, people were watching this like a slow-moving train wreck that you just could not look away from. It's another thing to get yourself involved just because, right? Pass judgment on PeaceWolf all you want. Pass judgment on Jasonifex all you want. But the divorce between PeaceWolf and Foxglove is, like, none of your business. It's none of my business. The only reason we're talking about it in this video is because they're the ones that sort of made this public. Foxglove's the one that made it public first. Anyway, Foxglove, all he wants now, supposedly, I feel like this is just a false cover to make him look better, like, in the eyes of the fandom. And it worked, for the most part. I mean, like, I was certainly convinced for a little bit. It sounds nice. He's basically saying, hey, he actually came out and said that he's not angry with PeaceWolf, that he loves her dearly, very, very much, but that she changed. It was that damn dastardly Jasonifex that fed her the devil's cabbage, and turned her away from the face of God, and turned her into the seditious harlot that she is today. It's his fault that PeaceWolf is the way she is now. She was always loving and caring and so beauteous of spirit and soul. And that was the seditious means of Jasonifex that had seduced her and turned her away from the church. What's hilarious to me is that PeaceWolf still has the cross in her Twitter bio. She still considers herself to be a Christian. Maybe a born-again Christian, but a Christian nonetheless. Okay. Here's where it gets dark. Now, there are claims out there that the whole reason that PeaceWolf left the way she did, she could have easily just walked out on Foxglove. She didn't have to leave that last image goodbye, right? She didn't have to. She could have just, left without a word. Ignored all Foxglove's, communications, left him in the lurch. He wouldn't have known. There's a claim that, PeaceWolf and Kabir, they both drew those two images together because they wanted to facilitate the conditions by which Foxglove would do something that would hurt himself. I guess they knew that he had high anxiety or something like that. They were trying to get him to hurt himself, maybe even kill himself, although I think that's pushing it a little bit. The hurt himself thing, doing something irrational or crazy or just... Because some people, if you stress them out just enough, instead of trying to attack somebody or hurt somebody else, they'll hurt themselves, in their state of utter panic and confusion, right? They were trying to facilitate the conditions by which he would hurt himself, just completely maybe incapacitate himself. Who knows? But that's dark, right? That is truly dark. Now, friends have sort of taken both sides, as in they just see this as a shitty marriage. In that Foxglove, he should have fessed up. They allege that he actually cheated on PeaceWolf first. And that sort of initiated this whole thing. And you might be wondering, well, how the fuck did PeaceWolf get to be friends with Jasonifex Kabir? And more importantly, what's Jasonifex Kabir getting out of all this, right? So what's interesting is, at Free For All, obviously, that was pretty much the Legion of Doom as far as the rest of the furry fandom is concerned. You had all kinds of controversial people that were absolutely reprehensible and abhorrent, all rubbing shoulders together. They had the opportunity to meet there, all right? And I suppose it's because Jasonifex Kabir respect PeaceWolf for being the owner of said convention, having poured her money, time, and effort into getting this convention off the ground. And they started to hop over the border, from Canada to Oklahoma to attend furry meets. And JSONFX even posted, a picture of, him attending, one of the bowling meets and having a good time and having, a chance to hang out with PeaceWolf. And, Foxglove even says that, JSONFX and Kabir would be at the household several times. It's not like they, came when he wasn't there. It's just that, by Foxglove's claim and estimation, both had taken advantage of his good graces and hospitality. And I'd say, yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, if you're fucking your wife behind, closed doors, or you're fucking someone else's wife behind closed doors, that is definitely taking hospitality to a new level. But at the same time, my question is, I'm expressing some reasonable doubt, because if you're a dude like Foxglove, you mean to tell me that you don't suspect anything's going on behind closed doors? Are you that much of a cuck that you're just, completely oblivious to what's going on around you? That every time that you go out, you come back, there's no indication, no suspicion on your mind that maybe something hanky-panky's going on behind closed doors? I swear, it begs the question, right? Because, if they had the opportunity to do it 10 fucking times, probably more, that would just, lead me to believe that either Foxglove's got his head shoved so far up his ass he can't see the light of day, or he was willfully ignorant some of the things that he probably should have called all three of them out on, when he had the chance. He's not going to have that chance no more. They'll have the chance to talk about it. So the claim is that, one of the juicier claims is that, the kid that's only 17 years old, supposedly JSONFX had force-fed PeaceWolf LSD, which I think is bullshit, but, I would imagine that marijuana was openly being shared and imbibed in. The only thing about marijuana is, that's pretty hard to sort of hide the smell. See, LSD, it leaves no taste, or it leaves, no smell. So that's easy to get away with. It's just that, from what I remember, LSD kind of keeps you awake for hours upon hours on end. Not speaking from experience, but so the conditions by which she would be on LSD and nobody would know, and the image that she left on the whiteboard, right? The psychedelic tropes and the wavy lines in the air and stuff like that, that would call into question whether or not she was truly under the influence of drugs, or she had been. And somebody that was actually close to PeaceWolf actually called her out personally and basically said, hey, I think it's utterly bullshit that you would consider this to be one of those moments where you just spread your wings, you're finally getting to enjoy yourself for the first time in your life, blah, 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 blah. And, it just seems like you're a scared little girl running away from her problems instead of confronting them head on. And there's more truth to that than I care to admit. But at the same time, PeaceWolf, sort of the narrative that came up now is that, it wasn't until Foxglove had cheated on her that all of this would have begun, right? She claims that she would have stayed faithful, that she would have been bound to him like glue, and that both of them would have had a happy marriage if it wasn't for Foxglove's infidelity. So really, it's PeaceWolf blaming Foxglove for starting the whole thing, and that she only responded in kind. Fucking JSONFX and Kabir and the back. But other people, they're sort of they're not necessarily on Foxglove's side, but they sort of recognize that as far as being individuals, JSONFX is incredibly manipulative, and he probably saw an opportunity to sow some discord and decide to, manipulate PeaceWolf into running out on her family to, undertake, a taste of freedom. Maybe this is the first time in her life that PeaceWolf has actually gotten a sense of true freedom. And it's sort of intoxicating, right? You are beholden to good Christian values and things like that, but then you get a taste of freedom, and it's so addictive that you want more of it, so you decide to do the most crazy, irrational bullshit you can possibly imagine, running off to be with two popufurs. Well, popufurs in quotes. There's definitely some asterisks underneath the title of popufurs, but certainly, more popular than you or I right now, right? Just saying. I have no idea who's watching this video, how popular you'd be considered to be, relative to the people in your life, but Like, you know, more well-known, more, like, accepted in their own community. See, like, Jasonifex and Kabir, they might be part of the furry fandom, but they seem to have their own community get dedicated to what they do. And the people that sort of cater to them, they, like, sort of ignore the wrongdoings and shitty opinions that Jasonifex and Kabir espouse. And, you know, it's in a twisted way that Jasonifex, he has acted with restraint, although I can't help but feel that there's ulterior motives here. And people are even calling it. They're saying, like, 3 months from now, I'm calling it right now, PeaceWolf is going to be alone, and she's going to rot in, like, whatever hellscape she finds herself in. And she's going to regret her decisions today, that nothing's going to work out the way she imagines they will. But for right now, as far as the conclusion to all of this, other people would say that both parties are, like, definitely in the wrong. Both PeaceWolf and, like, Foxglove. Now, supposedly, Foxglove, as far as cheating on PeaceWolf, it's something as little as him sexting somebody, probably to fulfill his breeding impregnation fetish, right? I mean, like, PeaceWolf's not going to let her fuck her, so, like, let him fuck her. So, I guess he's going to do sexting or something like that. But see, that's something, if you caught your partner, your significant other doing that, that's something that you would shout them down for. You would tell them, like, no, you do it again, there will be consequences. You don't, like, run out on the marriage without even a conversation about it, right? That's just fucking, like, what? That is such an overreaction. That's like to kill an ant from across the room. You pull out your 44 Magnum and blow it away. You know, like, the overreaction is just through the roof. So, yeah. Needless to say, this generated just enough of a Twitter shitstorm that it stayed interesting for a while. And it was sort of a guilty pleasure reading through all of this because, like, I'm going to be honest here, I didn't know a whole lot about PeaceWolf back in the day when I first made my first free-for-all video, but, like, getting a chance to sort of see her from across the way out in Oklahoma, you know, she doesn't really seem like my cup of tea. I think Karen is a good label for her. But see, here's where it gets even nuttier. Like, Jasonifex, supposedly, he and Kabir had, like, a threesome with her in the back room. But, like, Jasonifex, he doesn't seem to be taking PeaceWolf as a human being very seriously because, like, he said something pretty incriminating in one of his Discord servers, right? He's just like, you know what PeaceWolf and a bowling ball have in common? You can stick your shit in that, roll it into the gutter, it'll come rolling right back. Wow. Classy, Jasonifex. Good to see how you see a female out there that you've been banging. I don't know, it's just... this whole situation, right, is screwy, alright? Is this going to be dating in the furry fandom? Is this going to be marriage in the furry fandom from now on? Because, like, I hope not. I don't want to wake up every day and, like, find, like, two popufurs or questionable popufurs going at it and stuff like that. Foxglove doesn't even seem particularly innocent by all accounts because, like, if you look at his Twitter profile, the inoffensive part is that he's a Christian furry, IT, works in IT, and stuff like that. But then he identifies as being a male-to-female transsexual, while also being black. He's not black, by the way. He's white. Now, like, if I had the opportunity to really talk to Foxglove, I would tell him to, like, just let the divorce go through. But, like, Foxglove himself, he kind of let himself go, right? Like, he's definitely packed on the pounds, okay? Like, I already said that PeaceWolf, she's a little bit chubby, a little bit portly, but she's fairly attractive by furry standards. But fucking Foxglove, he's fucking let himself go. He's a fat fuck right now. He's not 2 steps away from being a Discord moderator himself. So I would just be like, yo, dude, like, the whole reason your wife ran out on you is because she don't love you anymore. So you're going to have to hit the gym, you know, work out, work down the pounds, kind of shave all that stuff off, tone and chisel your body. And, like, you know, maybe then you'll get some bitches on your dick. But until then, you know, no one's going to really want you. Now, it's kind of fucked because some people were, like, poking fun at that, right? They recognized that Foxglove was hoping to start a wonderful, beautiful family, and that he was hoping that in PeaceWolf that he was going to be able to fulfill his fantasies of impregnating her with his seed and having this family, right? But other people were just, like, passively dismissing the whole notion, just being like, you know, considering the fact that he hasn't seen his dick in about 10 years, I'm going to imagine that his fantasies aren't going to be fulfilled until he breaks out the turkey baster. Pretty crass and crude, right? But Hey, that's just people on Twitter, right? They're just cracking wise, having a good time, you know? That's all this is, right? Having a good time. I find it horribly irresponsible that, at the very least, if Foxglove is truly guilty of infidelity, that PeaceWolf should have confronted him then and there, you know, really just honed it home that, hey, I am divorcing your ass unless you tell me right here, right now, everything that you're guilty of. And the worst thing about that is that Foxglove has already mentioned the fact that they've gotten into fights before, they had a rouse, they got into it with each other, but that he forgave and forget. PeaceWolf certainly didn't forget, because she's fucking divorcing his ass. So people imagine that Foxglove's probably going to be single for a long time coming. Is it deserved? You tell me. I would just like to say that I'm kind of leaning towards the idea that it's both parties at fault, but at the same time, while most of the furry fandom sees PeaceWolf as the absolute guilty as sin, terrible human being, doesn't deserve to enter the kingdom of heaven, blah 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 blah, is worse than Lilith in the Adam and Eve saga. Well, I mean, more power to her. I'm starting to sympathize more with PeaceWolf because she's not the one that made this public, alright? This all got initiated by Foxglove indirectly, and other furries took notice and then turned it public, and then various communications got public. People are going so far as to say that Foxglove was very specific, in no uncertain terms, saying very specific things to very specific people, because he knew for a fact that those people would bring it publicly eventually and turn the rest of the fandom against PeaceWolf. So, there's this guy, right? His name's Zooptoon. I mentioned him as being in attendance at Free For All. And Zooptoon, he's not very well liked by the furry fandom, alright? He's, by my estimation, I just kind of looked at the guy. The worst thing about him is that there's an FBI warning.
FBI.
That he has, seditious anti-government, opinions and things like that. And he's considered to be a threat to the state, which certainly piqued my eyebrow. But, he, more or less, other than being cringy on his own, he doesn't seem that bad. He's not like a Fox or Nightfire that was actively trying to join the KKK and was prosecuted for grooming a minor across state lines, alright, like that. But Zooptoon, he was expressing irritation at the fact that Gsonafex and Kabir had undue influence in affecting PeaceWolf's state of mind, right? He noticed that they were getting closer and closer and closer to the point that PeaceWolf was openly hanging out with Gsonafex and Kabir like they were best buds. And he also expressed irritation at the fact that the furry raiders, they saw this as an opportunity to vie for control. They wanted to have greater influence over the convention itself. So that shows me that there's plenty of infighting taking place amongst the Alt-Furries and furry raider crowd. Granted, the furry raiders have always been kind of like a bunch of daredevils, memesters, and 4chaners in disguise. The equivalent of 4chaners that you'd see on 4chan, right? Because, as far as being legitimate Nazis, let's be honest, if the Fourth Reich ever took over, heavens fucking forbid, furries of any denomination be, lined up and shot. Let's be honest. If the Fourth Reich ever happened as people imagine it would, you'd probably get shot, I'd get shot, I would definitely get shot, and, a bunch of other people would get shot, and the furry raiders are no different. They don't seem to understand that. Granted, these are the same people that wear that fucking auspicious armband, red with a white spot, black paw print. Very auspicious. It almost reminds me of something. Anyway, it's interesting to see how, many people had so many different opinions of all this. By and large, the silent majority, they all broke out the popcorn. This is funny as shit, yo. So as far as some of the images that came out, right, and it's interesting to point this out, Kabir, shortly after PeaceWolf ran to, Gsonafex Kabir, she released a image where it was 3 feisty ferals. It was Gsonafex, it was Kabir, and it was PeaceWolf, all drawn as ferals, all together like a pack. Then later on, it was PeaceWolf drawn like she's crying, and Gsonafex and Kabir are comforting her. And I'm going to be honest with you. Jason Effects, he seems like a guy you can actually talk to, maybe crack a drink with, but would you want to talk with him? I don't know, alright? Because he seemed kind of like, kind of sussy and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, I'm curious as to whether he legitimately cares about PeaceWolf, or he just sees this as a convenient fuck, number one. Number two, whether or not, like, this is going to be, like, short-lived. Because, make no mistake, it's sort of like seeing that this is a polyamorous relationship, that he has taken on PeaceWolf to be a part of, he and Kabir. And Kabir's on board with it. I mean, there's been speculation as to whether or not they're having a good time together, but, that remains to be seen. They seem to be having a good time. So where's this going to go from here? Is PeaceWolf going to live on and be with Jason Effects Kabir for the long term? Or is she going to get kicked to the curb when she's no longer useful? And Jason Effects, by his estimation, managed to mold her mind into something that he sees fit. Or are they going to live happily ever after in, like, across the border in Canada? Only time will tell. Needless to say, this impacted a great deal of people. There's like one person out there, right? I don't know if you ever heard of the artist Technicolor Pie. She's one of the artists that I grew up watching, like, back in the day when I was younger. I would almost say, like, she has no idea who I am, what I'm all about, or anything like that. But I would almost say, like, if I could talk to her, I would probably reach out and just be like, yo, you're my furry mother. Even though you're only a couple years older than me, maybe several years older than me, but you're my furry mom, all right? Because, like, she would draw, like, what the equivalent of political comics, right? And she's one of the people that sort of weighed heavily on this whole situation debacle. She doesn't like PeaceWolf, she doesn't like Fox Club, she doesn't like Jason Effects, she doesn't like Kabir. Alright? They're all shitty people. At the end of the day, just be glad that you're not a part of this in any degree, okay? You're watching this video right here, right now. Do not reach out to these people. There's nothing for you to get out of this other than a keck and maybe some, like, harsh words and criticism. But, the beauty of all of this is that you do not have to associate with these people, all right? They are shitty people on their own. This whole situation has played out like a shit show, okay? This is not a tale of heroes and villains. This is an active shit show. All the chimpanzees are slinging shit at each other. And thankfully, I was there to provide you all an umbrella and a poncho to, like, shield yourself away from all the shit, okay? If I remember anything else about any of this, I will be sure to include it in this video, probably as an addition or like afterthoughts and things like that. But for the most part, I think I covered all my bases. I'm going to guesstimate that it's been about an hour and 10 minutes that we've been talking about the whole thing. And it was just a matter of personal preference that I sort of like, egged you all on to sort of ramp up the anticipation factor. I might follow up this video with a TLDR version so that you all can get the deets much faster than you did in this video, but consider this video to be a work of art. Anyway, I genuinely hope you all enjoy the video. Till next time, guys, take care and peace. I hope you all have a better one. Hold up! Wait a minute! Breaking news announcement, ladies and gentlemen. Somebody leaked an entire hour and 8 minutes of a free-for-all meeting between all the board of directors, as well as those that would be considered con staff.
2 associates, our guests of honor, for heaven's sake, even, was a pretty big deal. So there was that. And then on the 24th of October, not more than 3 days later, there was an unauthorized charge on her bank account from Fox's debit card for the company. And he confessed to spending money for non-related purposes to Awu. So at that point, we then called the bank and deactivated his card, and we got a refund for the expenditure. On the 28th of October, we called an emergency board meeting to have a confrontation and discuss what's going on, why Fox would be doing things like this. And after we had our discussion, a decision was made unanimously to go ahead and remove Fox from the board.
And let's just say that it revealed a few tidbits of information that I didn't include in this video, not until now. And apparently there's been a couple of meetings like that so far, alright? And there's sort of like a bit of an anticipation for 2023, okay? So the information that was revealed, and something that I forgot to mention in the entirety of the video, can you guess who the guests of honor for 2023 are going to be? I bet you can't guess. Jason Effects and Kabir. Those are the two guests of honor for next year. Free for All 2023. Now, here's what's interesting. Foxglove was, in fact, like part of all of this, right? Like, he was considered like an admin of the Discord that was sort of monitoring this whole situation for Free for All. But Foxglove's been a naughty boy. See, it was his personal bias that led him to remove Jason Effects and Kabir from the chat. And some of you might say, well, he was completely justified to do that because Jason Effects Kabir were banging his wife behind his back. There's no knowledge that was happening at the time, at least, but at the same time, it looks really bad, right? That his personal biases against those two led him to, like, remove them from the Discord. People that you want to anticipate are going to be the guests of honor for your next furry convention. Okay, that's very bad. And what's even worse is that Foxglove, he used a debit card that was intended for convention expenses for personal bullshit. I guess like a fucking Dakiamura of sea salt or some shit like that. It's not clear what the money was actually spent on. What is clear is that as soon as like Foxglove and the others found out about it, they immediately called the bank and said, yo, like, this was an unauthorized purchase on a business account. So they had the card canceled, they got the money refunded, and presumably Foxglove's going to be the one in hot water to answer for all this. But goddamn, so that kind of puts into question whether Foxglove is truly an innocent party in all this. I mean, he's undoubtedly a wimp, right? Like, he basically got cuckolded out of his relationship by none other than Jason Effects and Kabir. Perhaps it was deserved. I mean, like, his reputation in my eyes is definitely put into question insofar as, like, he just kind of let this happen and didn't exactly go out of his way to sort of put a stop to it, which tells me that he might be guilty of other transgressions that he's not willing to, like, sort of share with the rest of the public, but goddamn. So, like, embezzlement, basically. Embezzlement of convention funds for his own personal use at the expense of the convention. That shit don't fly, and at least they caught it, but what other things could he be guilty of? Was this like a routine thing for him? Anyway, that was the justification for why PeaceWolf and the others, they basically confronted him about it, and Foxglove sort of voluntarily left on his own, transferred the ownership of the Discord to somebody else, stepped down from being a member of the board, as it were. Because the people that were discussing in there, they spoke with, like, a level of authority. I remember such people as Lakota, or the Doom guy, or Mike, as he's actually known as, and things like that. But, apart from, like, little tidbits of information that you would catch, they officially took on the stance that they weren't going to talk about this publicly,
This is less of a question, more of a general statement that you did give me consent to say before.
Yeah, go for it.
Please, for the love of God, stop asking us questions. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to everyone else that's either has or is thinking about asking us questions because, well, they see knowledgeable people and then they just think, oh shit, let's just pry the hell out of people to get information that we would rather forget. So that's all I have to say. Please stop asking us.
Yep. Go ahead, Cyrus.
Okay, kind of to piggyback off what Ziegler said. I mean, obviously, don't ask us for information because understand there's a lot of stuff that we're just not at liberty to give out, or it's, like you said, personal information. But definitely, abso-fucking-lutely do not come to a staff member or especially a board member demanding information, because we're only going to give you what we feel comfortable releasing to the public and nothing more.
Well, we're telling the staff a little bit more than what we've told everybody else because they need to know.
Well, that's
I think
Still,
this is more generally directed to the people of Awu, not necessarily the staff who now know this information. If my brain is working.
And the reason why this information hasn't been just like shared to everything is we don't believe everybody needs to know what goes on behind closed doors. We need, it's good to just keep it under wraps, get through a situation and move forward instead of having it piggyback back on it.
Now, it remains to be seen who the actual leaker is. Like, who leaked this, to Rumble, of all places? That's where I found it, by the way. Like, little tidbits of this would be circulated far and wide throughout Twitter. But it wasn't until I actually checked out the Rumble link that I actually got to, listen to the whole hour-long, meeting. That was the one that took place just before Thanksgiving, in which case one of the people basically said, hey, I know he's going through a lot right now, but I'll go see Foxglove, see how he's doing, this Thanksgiving. And, PeaceWolf was more or less, okay, whatever. She sounds so reserved, so resigned whenever, Foxglove was mentioned. But at the same time, everybody else was basically saying, we're going to be tight-lipped about this. Nobody has they don't need to know. Anybody asks any questions, we know nothing, we see nothing. And they don't have, our endorsement of spreading this far and wide. Well, you kind of fucked up in that regard because the whole furry fandom was talking about it from day one, the end of October. And it sort of begs the question, how long has this been going on for, right? Because the first sign of trouble, presumably, Foxglove was removed, circa the end of October. That's when they had the emergency meeting and stuff like that. I didn't get a chance to listen to that, but I did hear clips and little tidbits of information that were, spliced together by somebody out there that had access to all this. So that just tells me that somebody in that Discord or, Microsoft Teams meeting or whatever space they were using to sort of screen share and talk about all of this, they would have the opportunity to have recorded and leaked all of this. Now, interestingly enough, Jason Effects and Kabir were present and they were spitballing ideas for Free for All 2023. And it really gets kind of boring to hear. Supposedly, their actual attendance numbers were closer to 200, which I still find very hard to believe, alright? They supposedly have 37 staff members. Do you really need that many staff members for, a convention that's pushing, about 100 to 200 people? Because I would imagine that, other people have more, but the people that were involved, they didn't seem particularly that bad, but presumably, if they're hanging out with PeaceWolf and friends, then they're going to be on the denomination of furries that other furries would be considered to be alt-right, right? And what's interesting is they're not really on board with the furry raiders, They don't really see them as a benefit to the convention. They see them as a detriment. And even Fox or Nightfire, he kind of acknowledged this and basically said, hey, unless we receive word from the board of directors or the AWU Association, we're going to treat them like any other furry out there. They're not allies, they're not partners, they are like any other furry out there, all right? So the seeds of discord have been sown already, and the whole debacle surrounding PeaceWolf running out her marriage with Foxglove, the damage is already done. A lot of people that were sort of swearing attendance for Free for All 2023, they're no longer interested. And various people are calling to question whether the event's even going to take place because this sort of scandal, it broke far and wide and it kind of rubbed a lot of furries the wrong way. I already told you, Crusader Cat, he's kind of resigned to his fate. He feels that this is going to be the end of the convention. Granted, not too many people sort of respect what Crusader Cat has to say, so. But, Zooptoon, he found this to be truly egregious behavior by somebody that would be, the head of the convention. It looks very bad, right? I just told you all. I am leaning more towards sympathizing with PeaceWolf. She's not what I would consider to be quality company, as in I wouldn't go out of my way to shake her hand or meet her at a convention or anything like that. But given the situation and what I know now, she's just slightly shittier than Foxglove is. Foxglove has to be the most pathetic person in this entire situation here. But at the same time, all the board members, the members of the board, as it were, the guests of honor, Jason Effects Kabir being there and stuff like that, they all knew, all right? And they were going to keep their mouths shut about all this. not reveal anything to the public about what had happened, what had taken place. And, it otherwise would not have been any of our business if not for the fact that both PeaceWolf and, well, mostly Foxglove, but PeaceWolf also to a lesser degree, they kind of brought this publicly, alright? And, the worst thing about JSonFX, right? He was getting grilled on Twitter by various people, and, JSonFX is like, hey, it's not my fault that I'm a big tough man that, took your wife away from you. He didn't say it quite like that. He said it more like, he basically used himself as an example that if he, just for who he is and what he's all about, if he was enough to pull away, a woman from a man, then that's, sort of a challenge for the man to sort of improve themselves. Like I said before about Foxglove, he's got to hit the gym, start, punching, punching bags, start, tearing down that fat that he's got accumulated all across his body, tone those muscles, get a six-pack ab. Maybe then he's going to get some bitches on his dick, but I don't think he's got any inclination to do that. Granted, the dude works in IT, so closest thing he's going to see to lifting weights is, lifting up a computer or something like that. Maybe tearing down a workstation. Who knows? But it was certainly interesting to see all that. I'm still poring over all this information, but, in one sense, things have sort of settled down, right? PeaceWolf ran out on her marriage, and that is sort of concrete. But what I find fucked up about the whole situation is that the whole narrative of PeaceWolf being an absolutely abhorrent mother, that she ran out on her kid and things like that, that was all a narrative cooked up by Foxglove because he personally wanted to start a family. And there was next to no truth to that because the kid that's 17 years of age going on 18, it's less than 2 months away that they're going to be considered a full-fledged adult. So they're not necessarily a kid. It's not like a fucking 10-year-old kid was left behind. So at best, Foxglove and PeaceWolf would be considered guardians of said child. Still a minor, but they're not going to be a minor too much longer. I am kind of getting a little bit, concerned for their well-being, being with Foxglove alone. This guy's in his, 20s, 30s, alone with a 17-year-old female? I don't know the gender of the kid, to be honest with y'all. It was never mentioned. It's just that they do exist. They're living there at the household. I can only assume it's a female because to fulfill Foxglove's idealized image of what he wants to see in a family. But, oof. This whole thing sort of played out like a glorified soap opera. And it's been very entertaining to watch. It's just that I am kind of curious if Free For All 2023 is even going to happen at this point because only about so this was slightly before Thanksgiving. According to their metrics, about 92 people have registered to attend, Free For All 2023. And the only thing that they can really speak for is that a lot of their guests of honor, slots have been filled. So that's the good part for them, right? But, that leaves a lot to be desired for the actual attendance, and they're already, wondering how they're going to sort of meet their goals. They seem pretty confident, and, I will say this, JSonFX and Kabir definitely brought some good ideas for what would revitalize and make the convention, appeal to more furries out there, but I don't think that's going to be enough. I think this scandal might actually get in the way of, them being able to formulate, Free For All 2023. On top of that, it appears that this whole schism, as it were, this has caused a rift internally, as far as, everybody that had any interest in attending Free For All, in any degree, whether they would be a staffer or they were going to be an attendee. So it's going to be really interesting to see how many people pontificate about all this, how many people take to Twitter, sort of just complain and whinge about this, that, and the other. Grab your popcorn, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're in for a long, dirty road. Anyway, hope you all enjoy the video. Till next time, guys, take care and peace. I hope you all have a better one. Hey fellas, thanks for watching the video today. I really hope you all enjoyed it. Would you care to hit that like button to subscribe for more? You know I really appreciate that, right? And hey, if you're in the mood for gaming, why don't you check me out on Twitch sometime? Link in the description below. Anyway, till next time guys, take care and peace. I hope you all have a better one.